Hi everybody, Riskmonger here, and today I'm going to give you a behind-the-scenes look at the creation of my fantasy astrology baseball lineups. So here at the gallery section of my website, astrologybaseball.com, I've posted starting lineups and rotations and bullpens featuring the top players from each astrological sign from every year from 2020 going all the way back to 1990. Here's the page from last year for reference. At the top, I break down the Fantasy Astrology Award winners. Here's the total fantasy points for each sign. Also a mock Final Four bracket. For the batters, they're all arranged by position rather than batting order. If a player is out of position, I will put an underline in their position column. But anytime I do that, I will always have an alternate down here at the bottom. Obviously, the total points from 2020 are going to be a lot lower than any regular season because we only played 60 games due to the coronavirus. And the way that I create these lineups is I go down the list of every player in a given season arranged by playing time. So plate appearances for batters, innings pitched for pitchers. Here's what the batters look like for 2021. I've already done a lot of this legwork. And the reason that I do it this way, rather than just sorting the database by fantasy points, is so that I can ensure that the players who had the most time in the majors get consideration first. Although I will go ahead and replace players based on total fantasy points as we go down the line. So, now that you've got all the background, let's get started. I'll move this one over and display my blank slate here. So the first player considered for 2021 Fantasy Astrology lineups is infielder Marcus Simeon, who was acquired by the Blue Jays prior to the season. That's what this yellow highlight means. Simeon played at least 20 games at both middle infield positions, so he qualifies at either one, but let's leave him at his primary position of second base for now. For number 2, we have another primary second baseman, Aquarius Whit Merrifield. He actually had enough games among all the outfield spots that he could qualify out there, but I'm going to leave him at his primary position as well because I've been paying attention and I know a little bit of what's coming down the pipe. Number 3 overall is the highest scoring batter, or highest scoring dedicated batter, not counting two-way star Shohei Otani. This is Vladimir Guerrero of also the Blue Jays, and he will serve as the Pisces first baseman. Number 4, going back to Virgo, we've got first baseman Freddie Freeman for the Braves. So we're already seeing that infield take shape. Next, yet another second baseman, Tommy Edman for the Cardinals and Taurus. So Edman actually qualified at a lot of different spots as far as fantasy baseball is concerned, based on his 2020 playing time. But in 2021, he was only in second base and right field. Speaking of right field, the first Capricorn batter that we see, Mitch Henager. He's actually played center field in the past for the Mariners, so that's something that we can consider possibly later on down the line. Next, another Pisces joining Vladimir Guerrero in the infield is shortstop Bo Bichette, his real-life Toronto Blue Jays teammate. So it's interesting that the Blue Jays had some sign synergy there. Back to Capricorn, the most active Capricorn shortstop is Seattle Mariners' J.P. Crawford. Although I have a feeling he's going to be replaced by somebody else as we move down. Anybody who's played MLB The Show 21 knows that Capricorn has a pretty solid shortstop. His middle infield mate for now is Ozzie Albies of the Braves, switch hitter. Now we've got our first, our first positional logjam here. Virgo already has a first baseman, Freddie Freeman, so that means Paul Goldschmidt of the Cardinals is going to have to be content with DH. If you're curious about the numbering system I use, positions on the infield are numbered 2 through 9, catcher through outfield, and then 10 is the DH here. So now the first batter for my home sign, the Cancer Crabs, DJ LeMahieu, who's played all over the infield. This versatility would have been important in years prior, but I made a new rule this year that any infielder can basically play first base. Okay, and here's something, or there's another positional logjam here. I'll just paste this new guy right up here, Jose Altuve, who has more points than Tommy Edman at second base, so that means we move Edman to his secondary position of right field, get Altuve down in there at second, and got a couple of good top-of-the-order hitters for Taurus. Now, the first batter of the first sign, at least as it concerns the Zodiac Wheel, Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, who qualified at shortstop, which is why we're going to put him in the 6 hole, even though he can play third base, because I know that Aries has a couple of really good third basemen coming down the line. Next, our first Libra, who was in the finals against Taurus. This is Baltimore center fielder Cedric Mullins, who had a hell of a breakout year. Also has the most at-bats of any Libra player. And joining him on the Libra scales, first or second baseman Jonathan Scope. I'm going to leave him at second base because that's the more demanding position. Might as well fill those slots first. Another Aries infielder, A's first baseman Matt Olson, who had a great year himself, although the A's fell just short of the playoffs. Not just short. Who am I kidding? So now we get the first Virgo outfielder. It's another former Oakland Athletic, Robbie Grossman, who signed with Detroit and played both corner outfield spots, but I guess I'll keep him in left for now. Now the first Scorpio batter that we see is third baseman Kyle Seeger. Hit 35 home runs for the Mariners. I saw a lot of his stats towards the end of the season when they were playing the A's. Gemini, the first Gemini batter we see is Angels middle infielder David Fletcher, who always seems to be getting on base. This guy never strikes out. Now back to Taurus, we see the top catcher in the league, Salvador Perez, who actually hit more home runs than any other catcher in a single season in history. So that's pretty crazy for him. Oops. Back to Scorpio, we've got yet another positional logjam. This one is between Seeger and Rafael Devers. So for now, we will put Seeger in the DH hole, have Devers play third base, because he had a lot more fantasy points. Also, Seeger had some time at DH in 2021, although I don't really care about that. Now, we've got back to Aries, third baseman Austin Riley for the Braves. This is why I put Kiner-Falefa over here at shortstop to begin with. So their infield is getting filled out. Speaking of infield, Aquarius now has a first baseman, Jose Abreu, even though his White Sox could not advance past the divisional series round. For reference, I'm writing this just at the beginning of the ALCSs. Oops. So now we've already got an Aries first baseman, so that means Carlos Santana, new to the Royals, will be relegated to the DH spot for now, although he didn't have a great season. Another big-time Scorpio power hitter, this time right fielder Juan Soto. I think he might have the most points of any Scorpio hitter. Now here is an interesting situation. We're going back to Aries, and the player that we are interested in is, down here at 15, Nolan Arenado, one of the top defensive third basemen, maybe of all time. And as you can see, Austin Riley already entrenched at third. He has more fantasy points than Arenado, so technically he would be the starter. However, If you recall back when Josh Donaldson was on the Braves, Austin Riley did play left field. So I wonder if, in this hypothetical fantasy astrology scenario, if it would make sense to move Riley to the outfield, which would allow Nolan Arenado to play at his regular position of third base. You'd have 3 third basemen in a row over here. I'm going to put a underline on Riley and make him italic because we do not have an alternate as of yet. I'm just going to assume this is okay. If not, obviously Riley would shift over to DH. Or technically Arenado would shift to DH. But again, I'm willing to play fast and loose with the positional eligibility rules if it puts a more interesting team on the field. Speaking of an interesting team on the field, Dansby Swanson is in that ALCS for the Braves, or the NLCS for the Braves. Going back to my home sign of Cancer, we now have a first baseman in Ty France. He actually also qualified for second, so what we could do is swap France and LeMahieu. We could move LeMahieu to third, but I don't think that's going to matter fairly soon. So now the top scoring Aquarius batter is Brian Reynolds from Pittsburgh. He played center field, so we can just leave him there. The most demanding position on the outfield grass. So here's why I said this whole Cancer situation wouldn't matter much. We've got now at shortstop or second base. Oops. Might as well just put him at shortstop. Trey Turner, who split the year between Washington and the Dodgers. He could be the top scoring Cancer batter. Or actually, no, I know he's not. We can strike that. But everything looks fine for now. However, when you add into the mix Jorge Polanco, played second base and shortstop also for the Minnesota Twins. So what we can do for now, shift LeMahieu to third, Polanco at second, Trey Turner at shortstop. Everything looks good, right? Well, just hold that thought for a second. First, we go back to Aquarius, where actually, I guess the only way to do this that makes sense, add a new player, Jake Cronenworth, who played second, short, and first. He had more fantasy points than Swanson, which means Dansby goes down to DH. Cronenworth is the starting shortstop. And, yeah, kind of a messy infield. Obviously, probably anybody that could play shortstop could play anywhere on the infield, which means Swanson might be heading back to third base sometime in his future, but we'll worry about that later. For now, we go back to Cancer with yet another first baseman. This is Nathaniel Lowe, who played for the Rangers. So now we have kind of a lefty-righty first base platoon, assuming that we're going to get another better DH, which we will. Don't worry about it. Oops. Mistyped there. So going back to Virgo, now we're going to see why Marcus Simeon sticks at second base rather than moving to shortstop, because we've got Carlos Correa. Whose time is it? It's his time, according to his new home run celebration. And we've got a pretty solid Virgo middle infield. All right. Take a little drink break here. Now, we're going to actually get our first player bumped off of a database here. Manny Machado, for the Padres, becomes the new top third baseman, which means DJ LeMahieu gets bumped actually down off the starting lineup because France and Lowe both had more points, so LeMahieu becomes kind of the first alternate here. Very expensive $15 million bench piece, although nothing approaching Machado's $32 million annual salary. Now we're going to get our first Sagittarius batter. It's Adam Frazier, who this slash indicates he did not get enough time technically to qualify in left field during a season split between Pittsburgh and San Diego, so he's going to stick at second base for now. And now we see one of the most exciting and electrifying players in all of sports, designated hitter Shohei Otani, whose 2,500 points eclipse everybody on the Cancer team, which means that Nathaniel Lowe will move down here. Here's what I'll do. I'll just move him to first alternate. We'll put Otani in the DH spot, and then we'll move LeMahieu actually down to the bottom. This is where we leave all the extras, notified by that X. So we'll get back to Cancer. We'll get back to Cancer Crab later. But for now, let's just keep filling out the other signs. Libra already has a center fielder, so Miles Straw can go into left, I guess. Not that it really matters either way which outfield spot he occupies. Sagittarius is going to add another infielder. It's first baseman Pete Alonso, who's a big power threat. Fletcher here in Gemini is going to get a middle infield mate in Cesar Hernandez, who was acquired from Cleveland by the White Sox mid-season. That's what the cyan highlight means, although we've seen that before, I'm pretty sure. Virgo is going to complete its infield here with Jose Ramirez. I think probably the top third baseman in the game right now. Although he has shown some positional versatility in the past, and we might be asking him to put that to the test here in 2021. Now the first Leo batter that we've seen. JD Martinez was a primary DH, but he had enough games in left field to qualify, and so we're going to put him over here at 7 because we're going to need the DH spot for a less versatile hitter later on. Speaking of versatility, primary right fielder Aaron Judge got enough games in center field so that he can slide into 8 next to Tommy Edman for Taurus, the team that actually won the Fantasy Astrology League this year. So now we've got another positional logjam here. Jonathan India, the top scoring rookie in all of baseball. That's going to shift Frazier to designated hitter, technically. Although Frazier could easily slot into left field, Jonathan India could easily move over to third base because that's where he played all through his minor league career until the Reds decided to shift him to second to make way for Eugenio Suarez / Mike Moustakas / take over for them for injuries. Also, for now, it does not make sense to have him go to third base because we have Jeimer Candelario, the switch hitter for the Tigers. It's kind of the heir apparent to Miguel Cabrera in that Detroit middle infield. Aquarius filling out its outfield with Mark Canha, who played all 3 outfield spots for Oakland this year. Taurus, another infielder, and another Oakland Athletic, Matt Chapman, who didn't have the greatest season with the bat, but his defense kept him in there. After India, Jonathan India, the best rookie, highest scoring rookie in the league, was Adolis Garcia. Played center field with Texas. Since Garcia is a Pisces, which is a negative sign, and India is a Sagittarius, which was a positive sign, those two will probably win the Rookies of the Year in their respective leagues. Another center field eligible rookie, we've got Dylan Carlson for Scorpio. He was eliminated, his Cardinals were eliminated in the wild card round in the 2021 playoffs. Oh, we're still at Scorpio, so we can round out the outfield with Joey Gallo, who ended the season playing left field for the Yankees. Pisces already has Guerrero at first base, so that means the only spot for Trey Mancini is the designated hitter, although he has played outfield in the past. I don't know if his recovery from surgery prevented him from playing out there this year, but we'll see if we need to ask him to play out of position later on down the line. Someone who doesn't have to play out of position is Yoan Moncada, Hernandez's teammate on the White Sox. As you can see, probably not a good idea to stack your team with Gemini hitters because they're not super strong. And now we're going to get our first instance of somebody having to play out of position. Actually, no. Austin Riley did that with Aries. But Brandon Lowe of the Tampa Bay Rays primarily played second base. And because he did play infield, I'm going to say that he has the capacity to move to first base if we need to. But he did play some outfield, some left field for the Rays, who love their positional versatility. And since the infield is already full up, I'm going to slot him over there for now. Shohei Otani, the reason he has 2 slashes here, basically what it means is if you don't have any slash by your position column, you have at least 20 games, which means you qualify to play there in a regular fantasy leagues. If you have a slash, it means more than 10 appearances, but less than 20. And if you have 2 slashes, it means less than 10. And I usually only do that for designated hitters just to show, like, in an emergency, Otani would play right field. I don't know if it's worth having him take an outfield spot just to get Nathaniel Lowe in there, because we're going to be asking a lot of Otani. He's also going to be in the starting rotation. So we'll see how that shakes out later on, how much I want to bend the rules for my home sign here. Okay, speaking of bending the rules, we've got Justin Turner, another third baseman, which means we're going to have to make some decisions here. I'm putting Adam Frazier in left. I'm moving Candelario to DH. And Justin Turner gets to be the third baseman. There's no reason to leave anybody out just yet. This will complete the Gemini infield with Yuli Gurriel, who I think might actually be the highest scoring Gemini batter that we'll see. He's kind of struggling in the playoffs for Houston right now, which I'm not too upset about. Another Pisces rookie outfielder, we've got Randy Arozarena, who played both spots for Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay lost to the Red Sox, in the ALDS, for which Alex Verdugo is a player. He actually played in all 3 outfield spots, so it's not too much of a stretch to have Judge there. So they can go back and forth depending on who's tired or whatever. Libra shortstop Xander Bogaerts played against Verdugo's Taurus Bulls in the finals and lost. Let's go back to Pisces and fill their right field spot with Jorge Solaire, who actually just got cut from the Braves ALCS roster because of a COVID scare. Not a COVID scare, a COVID positive test. So, back to Capricorn. We've got another infielder here. Eduardo Escobar played third, second, and a little bit of first. Of course, asking any infielder to go to first is not too much of a stretch. And Eduardo Escobar is one of those cases in point. Back to Libra. Right fielder and likely positive polarity MVP, Bryce Harper. Because most of the top batters in the league in 2021 were negative signs. Another negative sign here is Cancer Crab Yordan Alvarez, who played mostly DH, but some left field. Actually, what I'm going to do here is let's put Alvarez in left, because that's where he qualified. And then we'll move Brandon Lowe over to right. It's interesting that they have both Lowe and Lowe, spelled the same, pronounced differently. Used to both play for the Rays up until last season. Nathaniel was acquired in the offseason by the Rangers. All right, so back to Sagittarius and their infield logjam. We've got Ryan McMahon, who played second and third. He's played some first in the past. I could see him definitely going over there. I don't know if I could justify him at shortstop, and he has enough points to force Jeimer Candelario to the bench, which is kind of a shame. Because, just a lot of infielders stacked on top of one another. All right, back to Libra. We are going to, technically, if I was building a lineup with these 4 outfielders, Straw, Mullins, Harper, and Teoscar Hernandez, Teoscar would for sure be the DH because Miles Straw is like a speedy leadoff hitter type. However, what I'm going to do in interest of best practices, I'm moving Miles Straw down to the DH spot because he's got fewer fantasy points by far. And if I'm looking for somebody to easily replace, it's just easiest to look down at the bottom and see, okay, Straw is the first one out. Back to Scorpio, more power-hitting infielders. We've got Trevor Story, who somehow inexplicably stayed on the Rockies the whole season. He's almost sure to find a new team in the offseason. All right, so here is another Virgo logjam situation. Up here, I'm going to put in Max Muncie, who played first and second. However, we've already got pretty good first and second baseman over here. And even if we wanted to move Simeon over to short and bump Correa, he just barely edged out Muncie in terms of overall points. Another thing to consider, though, several years ago, I feel like he was last seen there in 2018 or something, Max Muncie didn't play a little bit of outfield. So I'm going to say, I mean, obviously now he's out with a sprained elbow. But I'm going to say Muncie can just go to the outfield and we'll see what happens. Another possibility is that Jose Ramirez played outfield. I think he was last seen in left back in like 2016. That was the only season in which he got plenty of time in the outfield, but he did play almost 50 games there. So, and Muncie could play third base in a pinch. So I don't know. I think in terms of getting the highest amount of 2,000 point batters in there, we need to get Muncie in the lineup. You know, whatever it takes. Man, this is a lot of talking. All right, so to serve as the Taurus DH, we've got Austin Meadows, who had just barely less points than Tommy Edman. The thing about Edman is that based on his 2020 playing time, he qualified to play shortstop in 2021 fantasy. Also, because he is a second baseman, I could see him just going to first. But until we have to change that stuff up, I'll leave it as is. All right, another positional logjam situation. Ahmed Rosario played shortstop and a little bit of center field, but obviously Scorpio has a very strong outfield. So for now, we're going to shift him to the other middle infield spot of second base, which, again, I've written about this a lot, but I think any shortstop can pretty much by definition play second base. So there's nothing wrong with moving him over there. Okay, back to Capricorn. And we've got a very versatile Chris Bryant, who technically qualified for third base and both corner outfield spots, but also had some time at center field and first base, which are both positions that he did play for the Giants in the postseason. So right now I'll leave him in left field, but I have a feeling one of these guys is going to move around, either Escobar over to first or Bryant to center field or something like that. All right, back to Pisces. We're actually going to see kind of a sad situation. Not that sad. But Ryan Mountcastle, the rookie first baseman outfielder, is going to push his teammate. Oh, actually, no. He's not going to do nothing of the sort. He qualifies in left field. Jorge Solaire is the lowest point scorer so far. We're going to move Arozarena to right, Mountcastle in left, an all-rookie outfield for Pisces. We'll leave Solaire here as first alternate for now. Oh, but actually all this is going to change. So check this out. Nick Castellanos is a right fielder. He's the highest scoring outfielder in the Pisces rotation. Nick Castellanos used to play third base. Pisces has a vacancy at third base. It's generally understood that he moved to right field because he is not any more capable of playing third base. However, in a hypothetical fantasy astrology situation, would it be out of the question to shift Nick Castellanos back to third base? I'm making the decision here right now that no, it would not be. Look, they might get a bunch of errors, but at least you'd have a whole bunch of very strong right-handed bats in the lineup. Come to think of it, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. used to play third base. So I guess that's also something to think about, but that might be asking too much, especially for your top hitter. As luck would have it, Virgo does not have a center fielder, and now they do. Enrique Kike Hernandez, who's been absolutely lighting up in the 2021 postseason in real life. Leo doesn't look very strong, but as you'll see later on, their strength is their pitching staff. Also, Jared Walsh did not have a bad season, playing first base and a little bit of right field. All right, now we've got another question of propriety here. Nelson Cruz was exclusively a designated hitter this year, except for one single solitary game that he played at first base after being acquired by the Rays. Just one game. And in fact, it was the only game he's played at first base in his entire career. He has played outfield, much more recently. So maybe it would make sense to put him in the outfield and have Brandon Lowe play first base. But you've already got one DH in the outfield. I think in the interest of getting the best batters in there, especially since it's my home sign and I'm willing to bend some of the rules, say hello to your 2021 Cancer Crabs first baseman, Nelson Cruz. Right? Because why not? Look, this is a fearsome lineup, and you've got an entire lefty-righty first base platoon ready to jump in at the first sign of any defensive miscues. So I don't know. This looks like a pretty good lineup to me. Defense be damned. Oh, speaking of defense be damned, Charlie Blackmon played a lot of center field in his career for the Rockies, but not anymore. He hasn't played there in several years because his defense is not good, and he's basically incapable of playing there. But why the heck wouldn't you just try to stack your lineup as much as possible? We'll see if this configuration stays down the line, but to me, it looks pretty good. All right, now what we have for Virgo is an available alternate for left field, and it's Chris Taylor. He played all over the diamond last year, which means we can make Max Muncie unitalic because we now have somebody that can fill in for him. Actually, you know what? Taylor's the starting center fielder. Kike Hernandez is first alternate for left field. So that's how it works out in terms of the fantasy points. Here in this exercise, we're all about just maximizing fantasy points. We just want the most numbers in this column that we possibly can get. So we're willing to bend the rules a little bit. Max Muncie is going to make a very shaky left fielder, but he sure does swing a hot bat. Okay, so to round out Scorpio, we've got Giancarlo Stanton, who played mostly DH, but also was an outfielder. So what we could do, actually, I think Joey Gallo has played some first base in his career, but since Kyle Seeger is the active infielder, I'm going to move him across the diamond. Because look, if you can handle third base, I'm pretty sure you can handle first base. You just have to stand there and sometimes scoop a ball out of the dirt, right? Can't be that bad. I guess technically, Giancarlo had more fantasy points than Joey Gallo, but I'm going to leave him at DH because that's his primary position, even though it's not really a position. All right, back to Leo. Got another log jam. First baseman Jared Walsh is going to be backed up by first baseman Anthony Rizzo, who went to the Yankees last year. All right, Libra now actually will get a new designated hitter. and it's Andrew McCutchen. That'll shift Miles Straw down here to first alternate. He's a good guy to have on the bench because he's got tremendous defense. This is why I wanted Teoscar Hernandez in the outfield. Just because it's easier to switch out, the lower scoring players. All right, now we've got our first instance of a player going directly to the bench. So, Cancer Crabs already have plenty of infielders, even considering we've got a DH in the infield. And third base and shortstop are pretty well stocked. So I'm going to go directly to the bottom and paste in Eugenio Suarez, who, the Reds tried to play him at shortstop a little bit this year. It didn't work out. He didn't even have a great season playing at third. So he is not going to make the Cancer Crabs starting lineup. I'm still going to keep him on the database because he breaks the 700 point threshold. Basically, if somebody has less than 700 points, I'm just not going to include them. But somebody who had a lot more than that, Hunter Renfroe, he was originally a platoon hitter, but showed that he could play even against righties. Okay, Gemini. We've got another logjam here. So Luis Urias qualified at shortstop, third and second, which means David Fletcher is going to move down to DH. Now again, if this were a simulation setting, it might make sense to have somebody like Cesar Hernandez or Yohan Moncada go to DH because of whatever their defense is. But again, we're just concerned with fantasy points. Fletcher has the fewest. He's on the bubble, and he'll go to the DH spot. All right, so speaking of very shaky defense, here's what I'm going to do for Leo. Josh Bell had barely enough games in the outfield to even merit inclusion here. So basically this little arrow means that he did not have enough games at that certain position. So he didn't have 10 games at left field, but if you combine all of his appearances in all the outfield spots, then he does get to 10. However, unfortunately, 10 is not even enough to qualify. So, well, I guess when you think about it, no, here's what we should do. I'm going back. Jared Walsh did have 10 games in right, so he can go there. And then Josh Bell can be our primary first baseman because he has more points than Anthony Rizzo. Very shaky outfield for Leo. But again, we don't really care too much about that. Back to Pisces at second base. This is going to fill up their lineup except for getting an alternate for third base. Gene Segura played for the Phillies. Actually, last year, he did play a lot of third base. But in 2021, he was strictly a second baseman. Look, at some point, we might have to shift Castellanos to the outfield. Trey Mancini would be out. Segura goes to third just because he can if we get another second baseman. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. I kind of like how this looks, even though I'm sure the infield coach will be pulling their hair out at certain points here. Oops, I typed in Scorpio, but I meant to type Capricorn, where, okay, here's when we're going to actually have to make a decision. Actually, technically not yet because we have the DH spot available, but look, Chris Bryant, you go to second base. Henager, you're in left. Kyle Tucker is the new right fielder. He's hitting well in the postseason as well. So we'll see what happens there. Here's why I was thinking about Scorpio. They get an alternate that can technically be qualified to play first base, and Eric Hosmer. As you can see, if we swap those two out, though, we would be losing, almost 500 fantasy points. Kyle Seeger does have an alternate, so we can take the italics away from his name. All right, going back to Pisces. If I was not feeling as charitable as I am right now about Nick Castellanos at third base, what would happen is Segura would go to third. Nicky Lopez, who could play shortstop, would go to second base. Or maybe Lopez could play third base as well. I don't know. I'm going to leave him down here as an alternate just in case. Another Pisces that does not get to stay as an alternate, he'll go directly to the extras, is Tommy Pham. didn't have a great season. Oh, another one. We're just filling up this extras zone. Josh Harrison. Heck of a player, but the Cancer Crab's infield is so strong that he's not going to get a spot. I hope the A's re-sign him next year. This is worth looking at. Actually, it's not. We know that we have 2,000 pointers everywhere along the Virgo infield. So Willy Adames, even though he had a tremendous season, basically turned around things in Milwaukee after he was acquired, but he's not going to get to start for them. But back to Virgo. This is baseball is a game of inches, and Adam Duvall, who qualified in all 3 outfield spots, has just a few more inches on Chris Taylor. And and Taylor himself has a bunch of inches on Enrique Hernandez. So Duvall is going to slot in as the new center fielder. Taylor is the first alternate. Kike gets the boot. Sorry to say. But at least he's playing in the real-life playoffs, so we can continue to enjoy his antics. For Leo, they're going to get themselves a shortstop in Kevin Newman. I think he might be the first starter that we've seen under 1,000 fantasy points. All right, I don't know how much I want to keep stacking the alternates here, but look, Tim Anderson had a hell of a season. If he wasn't injured, you could see that his 14 points per game equaled Polanco and Machado, even Yordan Alvarez, even Brandon Lau. So if he wasn't injured, he would for sure be on there. Based on my new rule that allows any infielder to play first base, he technically would qualify at first, although he has just a few less fantasy points than Nelson Cruz. So we're going to leave that where we are right now. All right, Libra gets a new designated hitter, which moves McCutchen to first alternate. Obviously, again, Betts is a terrific outfielder. He would play the outfield with Teoscar Hernandez being the DH. But again, we're concerned only about fantasy points, and Betts was injured during the year, so he didn't get a full season's worth. Another Cancer Crabs versatile player, Josh Rojas. He would be good to have on the bench because he can just play anywhere. But unfortunately, he did not have enough points to merit consideration. All right, here's where we have to consider moving somebody around. I think Jake Cronenworth is more than qualified to play third base, even if he's technically not eligible. Brandon Crawford had one of the best offensive seasons of his career, approached 2,000 points. He's definitely the shortstop. That leaves Dansby Swanson as the DH. There's also the possibility of moving Merrifield to the outfield at some point, but we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Going back to Sagittarius, we've got somebody tailor-made to fill in the void at shortstop, and it's Javier Baez, who split the season between the Cubs and the Mets. The reason why I didn't want to move Bryant to first or Escobar to first is that CJ Cron is on the scene. The Rockies just re-signed him after bringing him in during the offseason, and he had a really good season. Oh, actually, I'm going to do this first. J.P. Crawford, like I said, he had more plate appearances than any other Capricorn shortstop, but in terms of pure production and productivity and electrifying presence on the diamond, nobody can touch Fernando Tatis Jr., even though he did have to move to right field towards the end of the year because of shoulder troubles. But as we've seen, now with Crawford, even if we're considering real-life injury situations, Crawford could take short and Tatis could just DH. Wouldn't have to use his shoulder at all. And now, rounding out the top 100, we've got a center fielder to place in between these two Leo non-outfielders. It's Randall Grichik of the Toronto Blue Jays. So that rounds out the top 100. Thanks very much for watching. As I complete this database, I will post it to my blog, astrologybaseball.com. And until then, stay tuned for more baseball and video game related content.